Welcome, everybody. Chicago Title proudly presents How to Love Your Transactions, an introduction to the guidelines, tips, and strategies that help you close. On our agenda today, we will cover what we need upfront and from the contract to get going with the escrow, the earnest money deposit, the digital opening package sent to your sellers and buyers, transaction timelines, red flags to watch out for, changes to share with your escrow office, and cancellations. Will also allow some time for Q&A to answer any of your questions. So with that, I am going to introduce Anna Gettman and turn it over to her.
Good morning, everybody. I'm happy that you guys are investing your time this morning to grow and to learn a little bit about myself. I'm in my 25th year of doing escrow and title in the industry. Started from the front desk as a receptionist and a little bit of title for a few years, and now doing escrow. So just a little bit about me, and I think it's important just so you know how long I've been in the business, because I pretty much I still see new things every day, every week, but I've kind of seen a lot of just different scenarios. So if you have any questions, like Jen said, just go ahead and pop them in the chat. And if I haven't answered them, within the slides, I'll be sure to answer them at the end. So when, in this market, actually, when you get to open a new escrow, it's amazing and you feel great and, all the feelings are all there. And so you want to make sure that everything goes without a hitch. Now, of course, being realistic, you're going to have speed bumps. So that's what we're going to try to avoid, or try to give you information today to try to avoid, just certain things. I mean, you have to pay attention to your entire transaction, but just certain things that we feel that you should maybe just focus on ahead of time, be a little bit proactive instead of reactive. And so hopefully today you will find this information that we are going to be providing you useful and resourceful. So once you get your accepted contract, typically in our county, in Fresno County, the listing agent typically is the one to open escrow and to choose, which title and escrow company will be handling the transaction. There is a small area in Madera County, I think Eastern Madera County, where the selling agent, where the buyer's agent opens up escrow. And so, but for the most part, it's usually the listing agent. And in regards to that, when the listing agent is the one to be opening up escrow, oftentimes those escrows are already pre-opened, where they have ordered the preliminary title report ahead of time, typically after they have obtained the listing agreement, a fully executed listing agreement. And that's just a good practice to have, because we'll talk about a few things along the way that benefits you to pre-open your escrow, to order that preliminary title report, to try to catch any of those speed bumps that I was talking about, try to avoid them and give you a little bit extra time in getting them ironed out. But having said that, what we need when you have a fully executed contract, like when you have an accepted offer, we do need a fully executed purchase contract and all addendums. It is super important that you include all addendums. Now, we do read through the entire contract. We do go through the entire attachment that you provide us. But a good practice that you should have, that I think is very important, is to put those, of course, seller counteroffers, buyer counteroffers, addendums, put those at the beginning in your scan to us of the contract, just so we can kind of have a heads up of what changes were agreed upon or made before the original contract. So that's just, if you don't do it, that's fine. It's not like a drop dead requirement. It's helpful. And it helps us to kind of paint the picture of what the transaction is to look like. So, and then secondly, contact information for the buyers, the sellers, lender, payoff lender, any HOA, association managers, anything that you can possibly gather from your clients, especially your sellers. When you have that listing agreement, you're sitting in that listing, asking all these great questions, collect all that information, because from the time that you have the listing appointment to you actually getting an accepted offer, there may be a little bit of time, and we're all human and we forget things. So if you sit down and take notes on your listing appointment, so when the time comes, you can review your notes and be like, oh, this is great information to provide the escrow officer, she's going to need this. So you're giving us a complete picture. But going back to the contact information, it's super important that we typically like to have cell phone numbers. Landlines are a little difficult. Work numbers are a little difficult because I'll go into it in the next couple of slides. We do an electronic package where a code gets sent to their phone, and if it's not a cell phone, we find it difficult that the client can obtain that code. But we like cell phone numbers and complete email addresses. And it's very, very helpful. Now, having said that, if you have a client that just doesn't like to use email or can't use email or just technically challenged, it's fine. Just let us know that. So going back to the information gathering, whatever you think is necessary or important for us to know, go ahead and tell us. Send us it in that email, because it's just going to make you look that much better, like, oh, my agent really communicated all my wants and needs to the escrow company. He or she is fantastic. I'm going to refer them to all my friends. So it's just helpful to make you look that much better. And then again, HOA and solar information. We all love solar. How to love your transaction. Now we love solar, right? Because it's almost on every single transaction, and that's okay. Because rewind 3-4 years ago, we were all frustrated and pulling our hair out, and like solar was, the bad word. Now we're figuring it out. We have figured it out, and now it's easier. We just need to know who that solar company, that contract is through. Is it Sunrun, SunPower, Tesla, all these other solar companies. We have the line of communication to these. Of course, we'll go on a little bit later, but what we need done in order for escrow to get what we need from the solar company. And then again, any special circumstances surrounding the escrow. If you have a very sensitive client, let us know that. If the situation is a little bit an unfortunate situation happened, let us know that. We need to approach your client in a different manner. Let us know that. Again, I have seen it all. I have seen disgruntled clients coming into the transaction because they're not happy, or they're being forced to, or they're having to sell the house. I don't like to use the word force, but they're having, for whatever reason. We just need to know what we're coming into. We want to be prepared. We want to be, armored. We want to make sure that we are giving your client the best top customer service that they deserve and expect. So the next step after that, we will be receiving the earnest money deposit. Now, there's various ways to receive this earnest money deposit. And the most popular way right now is wire transfers. With that comes, a risk, but we try to mitigate all risks as much as possible. So if your buyer is submitting their earnest money deposit via wire, they're only to get wire instructions directly from our office, not from, you should not be requesting those wire instructions from us for you to pass on to your buyer. That's why we need your buyer's contact information, cell phone and email address, so we can get that to them directly. I've actually had buyers come into my office and I can hand them wire instructions because they're just a little nervous, because on our hold music, we talked about wire fraud, so giving them information has made them a little nervous, which that's okay. But if at all, you, for whatever reason, get CC'd on that secure email to your buyers of the wire, wire information, by no means, if you felt like, oh, the other, like say we have 2 or 3 buyers on the transaction, and you felt like maybe those other 2 or 3 buyers, because we didn't have their contact information, you felt that they needed to have that as well. By no means, do not forward our email to additional buyers, because we send that email out in a secure manner. The moment that you forward that email, it is no longer secure. So do not forward our email. If we need to send it to additional buyers, just pick up the phone or shoot us a quick email, and we'll be happy to send those wire instructions to multiple buyers. So other additional ways of earnest money is personal checks. Those are still welcome. The only situation that we suggest that you don't use a personal check is if it's a quick escrow. If it's a 10 to 14 day escrow, we have to, the good funds law, we just simply that doesn't allow us enough time to have those funds, negotiated and making sure that, it's good funds. So that would be the only time that we would not accept a personal check as a quick escrow. Cashier's check, wired funds like I talked about. And then we have a mobile deposit through Start in Here. And that is our digital package that we send out to the buyers. Remember I had said something about them receiving a code. That's how this is received. They get an email from us. They go ahead and access it. The system sends them a code to their cell phone. They use that code to, enter, and then they have access to our portal. And within that system, within that Start in Here, they have there's a section of that. They have the opportunity to make their earnest money deposit in a mobile way, where they take a picture of the check front and back. It does require them to complete the check completely. You'd be surprised that we do get some mobile deposits that they forget to sign the check. They forget to date the check. They're depositing the check. They've given us the mobile deposit, but they've written the check out to a completely different entity or person. So they do get confused, but we try to give them clear information and instruction. But having said that, we have more success in the mobile deposit than when we don't. There's just those few instances, and then we just pick up the phone and we can give them a comment like, "Oh, thank you so much for using our mobile Start in Here portal for your deposit. However, we're going to send you a new link because you forgot to sign the check," or whatever the case may be. And a lot of the times they're fine. They're like, "Oh, sorry," so it's not a one and done deal. We can send that link back out. And they can go ahead and enter their mobile deposit that way. And then if you are sending your client in with the deposit, it is helpful if they have the name of the escrow officer and the escrow number and the property address. And you would think that this is like, oh, that's a given. You would be surprised how many buyers do show up at our office and they actually don't know the address of the property that they're buying. They're just super excited, and they've seen so many houses and they fell in love with their house. And so just make sure that you give them all that information. So when they show up, we can deposit their money and give them a receipt, and they feel all the warm fuzzies inside and they're excited to buy their house. Okay. I went over really quickly on the digital opening package. It's called Start in Here. It's something that is super exciting. If you don't know about it or you want more information about it, contact our awesome sales executives that are on this call, and they will help you through it. But what basically it is it's an app that you get. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting myself mixed up. This is the package that the buyer gets. And that it allows them to give us all of their pertinent information, like how they want their name on title, how they their marital status, how they would like to be vested, and any additional information that if there's going to be additional people on title with them, who they are obtaining their loan through. And sometimes we don't have this information when the escrow is open because maybe they're shopping around or they haven't actually decided who they want to go with. So there is a section where they provide that information to us so we know who we're completely communicating with. So that is for the buyer. That's the information that we get from the buyer. Now, the same package goes out to the seller, and the items that we collect from the seller is like who they make their mortgage payments to, if they have an HOA, and if so, who is their management company. So even though we're asking you to ask these questions ahead of time, this is another opportunity for us to collect this information, so we make sure that we process the transaction, as quickly as possible, and that there is no hiccups or delays. It also asks if there's solar. It also asks if there's any, if they're doing a 1031 exchange, and gives them an opportunity to let us know any additional items that they feel necessary, that they need to give the information that they need to give us. So this package goes out to your buyers and sellers. I apologize for jumping ahead, but this is start in here. And so just encourage your clients to complete this the digital package, and then also just give them a heads up that they're going to be getting it. And it does, in the email, it does identify who we are, but I still get some emails back saying, not sure, because people are very wary of emails, that people get spam and junk emails, and there's always people that are very concerned about what they're getting, and that's okay. So if you want to go ahead and just give your clients a heads up that they will be getting a Start in Here digital opening package email from Chicago Title once that you are in escrow, and then just encourage them. And if they have any questions, they can always just give us a call. I've actually sat on the phone with some clients and walked them through it, and it just saves them time and energy and paper. So I'm happy, and all of us here at Chicago Title are happy to get on the phone and walk your clients through this Start in Here digital package. Okay. Just a little side note on what I was talking about, and we'll talk about it later, or there'll be another opportunity, is the In Here app for agents. Basically what it is an app on your phone, and when you have a transaction with Chicago Title, in that app you get push notifications and updates on what's happening with your escrow. So when we receive the earnest money deposit, you will get a notification, and then you can access a copy of the earnest money deposit. And there's other additional documents, and it's in the works. I mean, it's available, but there's additional things that are being enhanced at this moment. But it's something that if you are curious about, I encourage you to ask your sales execs about it, because it's amazing. So now on to page 1 of the RPA. And there's just a few things that I just want to kind of point out that make sure that you have the information that we often see is a little bit either it's either erroneous or missing, and it just kind of eliminates questions, phone calls, emails, because you guys are busy out there. You're trying to get all, trying to find buyers' homes, trying to get those listings. The last thing you need is phone calls from escrow saying, I'm missing information, or I need this, or titles questioning, the APN, or whatever the case may be. So basically this page, the one thing that I would encourage you to make sure that it's correct is not only the address, but the APN number, the assessor's parcel number. That is actually what we go by and insure transactions on, is the assessor's parcel number. So just make sure that that top portion is complete, that this is an offer from, and item B, that is also complete. And then, and side note, if your buyer changes, or your buyer is a trust or an entity, even though the individual is a signer for the trust, or a signer for the entity that is mentioned in section 1A, you still need to do an addendum, of assigning the buyer's interest into the entity or the trust. Just a little side note, because I had a phone call yesterday about that, so I thought I'd just mention that. And then 2B, it's very important that information is filled out in its entirety, and those license numbers are provided to us. And just because we have a little bit, sometimes we deal with out of the area agents. And so we just we do our due diligence and making sure that license haven't expired, and, because we can't pay somebody that is not, practicing under a unexpired license number. So that is information that we do require on there that makes sure that it's, correct and filled out in its entirety. Excuse me. I don't want my throat to start getting dry, so I apologize. But the continuation of page 1, purchase price and all cash area in 3A, that purchase price, making sure that it's clear, concise. If it's all cash, that's, it helps us process our file, because oftentimes cash transactions do require them to close, sooner than later. And so that basically, that is something that you want to make sure that it doesn't, that is clear. And then close of escrow. 3B, close of escrow, that's how many days after acceptance. The days of acceptance is if you have counter offers, we take the dates that the counter offers are dated, and then if that section is 30 days, we go 30 days from the last dated counter offer, whether they're buyer or seller counter offer. And then the initial deposit, section 3D, making sure that that information is correct. And then 3 days from the acceptance date, having to go back to we go from the seller or buyer counter offer, the last dated counter offer is when we start counting those days. Now, for instance, if your accepted date is on a Friday, day 1 is not Monday. Day 1 is Saturday. So, and we're not open on Saturdays and Sundays. And so unfortunately that kind of limits the time to get in here, but technically that earnest money deposit is due by the end of business day on that 3rd day. It's typically not a problem if the accepted date is, earlier in the week, but I've had a misconception where, believe it or not, an agent said, yes, it was accepted on Friday. I have until, Wednesday. And I said, no, it doesn't really work that way. Unfortunately, we aren't open on the weekends, but those days still start the clock still ticks. So just wanted to point that out. And then loan amounts, I know that those kind of change. They fluctuate here and there, programs fluctuate, but typically the lenders really want to jump on the disclosure process. So if we're not given any information otherwise, we usually take that amount in section E1 and what that loan amount is, and we disclose our title and escrow fees based on that loan amount. And then I think, pretty much like I said, we read it the entire contract. The purpose of this is just to kind of point out just a few things that I see have issues from time to time. Seller credit, this section, now G1 seller credit, that basically, if there is a dollar amount there, we're going to go ahead and put that unless it's changed in either the seller counter, buyer counter. People do use addendums after the fact to change that seller credit. The reason why I want to point that out is, for instance, even though there's a $5,000 amount, there are oftentimes, depending on the loan program or what the lender's allowing, that $5,000 on my closing statement may change to $4,649.59. And I do get some pushback because it's not explained to the buyer the reason why there's a difference, because all they remember is the contract said I'm supposed to get 5,000, and now your closing statement says 4,600, whatever. And the thing is they have to be explained by the lender, loan officer, that there is a criteria or requirement that they can only get so much. So it used to be where it said, or it still can be up to regarding closing costs. So just to kind of maybe you want to have a conversation, we will have a conversation with your buyer to explain the difference, but we can't go into detail because we don't know all the underwriting that they have already gone through to come to that certain dollar amount of the 4,600 and change. Because I mean, a lot of these buyers, they want to get, and I don't blame them, they want to get every penny that was promised to them as a credit. So anyhow, that I just wanted to point out on that page. The next page, there's really only timeframes in here that I wanted to kind of go over. The preliminary title report is where I want to revisit of why it's a good practice to have to pre-open your escrows to get that preliminary title report, because there is a time frame that you need to have that delivered to the buyers. Having said that, though, when you have an accepted offer, we update that preliminary title report to reflect who the buyer actually is. So when something comes in and gets pre-opened, our buyer reads on our order to be determined.
What can I join in here?
And so we often have preliminary title reports or pre-open and issue those preliminary title reports. And that gives you the chance to take a look at the property. You've sat with your seller. They've told you everything that they know of. But sometimes they forget things, or sometimes they don't think that the information applies. But at least your preliminary title report is giving you the idea of what we're going to have to deal with in your transaction. Now, say your seller only gave you, say that they only have one mortgage, and you get your prelim, and there's two mortgages on there. So by pre-opening it gives you a little bit of time to investigate the situation. So when that offer does come in, you're ready to go. There's not going to be any delays or speed bumps. And if so, you can prepare your buyer's agent and your buyer saying, hey, we're accepting your offer. However, this is something that we're dealing with and we're almost done, or we anticipate it to be completed in the next, week or two. So that's just another reason why you should have the good practice of pre-open your escrow. The next section of the contract is the seller occupied or vacant units, or, if it's tenant occupied. I believe that we do need to know this information if there's going to be a seller in possession, and if we're going to have to, do per diem for the seller to stay there a certain amount of days after the close of escrow. If there's going to be a security deposit, charged to the buyer for the seller in possession. If it's tenant occupied, we need estoppels so we can prorate the rents and transfer the security deposit. So these type of things are very, very, very important to tell your escrow up front at the very beginning, because also those security deposits that we are transferring, and it's credit debit on the closing statement. We want to be able to give that information to the buyer's lender up front, when we are disclosing those fees, just so that they're aware that even though they're getting a credit of $1,500 for a security deposit, that it's technically not their money. We're just transferring that security deposit from the seller to the buyer, because of course, the buyer is going to hold the security deposit for the tenant that's currently in there. So this is super important to make sure that you provide estoppels along with this section being completely filled out. Okay. The next page is a lot of this is kind of pretty, we get a lot of our information on this page, the natural hazard disclosure, super, super important. If you are a listing agent and the offer comes in and it says seller's choice, include in your email who you want your escrow office, like which company you want your escrow officer to order the NHD from. This is most, like, besides what your commission percentage breakdown is, this is the highest This is a question that we have to ask a lot of the listing agents because the contract comes in as seller's choice. They open up escrow, but oftentimes they don't tell us who we need to order the natural hazard disclosures. So it's not going to be filled in here because it does say seller's choice, but when you open escrow, please include that information. Then on here too, for the most part, Fresno County customary fees, buyer and seller split escrow fee, seller pays for the owner's policy, buyer pays for their lender policy unless stated otherwise, seller pays for the county transfer tax. In our area, we don't have city transfer tax, so that's not an issue. But if you are writing up an offer outside of our area, I suggest you do a little bit of investigation to see if there is a city tax in the area that you're writing an offer up. And then HOA fees. Sometimes I get contracts and all these boxes are marked for the HOA and an HOA doesn't even exist. There's certain agents out there that they don't want to miss anything, and I commend them. I commend them for not wanting to miss anything. But the only thing I just ask is do a little bit of investigation before you mark these boxes if you're unsure if there's an HOA, just because it causes a little bit because then we think, oh gosh, are we missing something? And then I tell title to check 2-3 times because I don't want to miss anything. Are you sure there's no HOA? And then it just leaves a question. Or even the buyer, like, are they 100% sure that there's no HOA? So just do a little bit of investigation. But on this part, if those boxes are marked and there is indeed an HOA, another reason why we like pre-opens is because it gives us an opportunity to contact the HOA company. Now, depending on like in this market, it's kind of funky a little bit, but we typically will order the HOA, but then if we have to order an update, just keep in mind that may cost your seller another small fee to update it, because some HOAs do have monthly meetings and they have, and those meetings do get issued in the HOA packages. And so the HOA may charge another fee. Now, the reason why I suggested it might be a good idea is because some HOA companies take 10+ days to give us the HOA package. And of course, you have a time frame that you must get that information, or, along with us, you teaming up with us to get that information to the buyer. So that's all. Private transfer fees, those are endowments. That's a whole nother animal. If you're aware of that, it will show up on the preliminary title report if there's private transfer fees. Okay. Just a recap, if the property is tenant occupied, that's basically what's important on this page. And then any different, I talked about the trust advisory earlier. If your buyer is a trust, then you should have a trust advisory accompany your contract. Okay. Excuse me. And I think, rural properties, if they're septic, well, of course, all those addendums are super important. You're going to be dealing with it more than we are. We're just going to be looking for invoices if those boxes are checked. If it's a probate, we're probably going to know about it already. If you have pre-opened, of course, but we eventually will, we will know about it pretty quick. And then we haven't seen those other addendums in a while, like REO and short sale. And hopefully we don't. I don't think we're gonna, cross our fingers, but I don't think that's coming. The next section, page 6, title, this, basically that your seller is going to deliver clear title. We're going to issue a preliminary title report. Your buyer's going to receive it. They're going to review it. If they have any questions, they're welcome to contact our office. We're happy to go over the preliminary title report. We're happy to go over the preliminary title report with you as an agent, so you understand should your clients have questions that that they're directed to us, but that you understand what they're asking as well. Okay. This is my favorite one. just because out of all our, I talk, of course, talk to a lot of our escrow officers, not just here at our company, but across the board. I'm sure a lot of you see me out and about, attending industry events. And so I get to do talk to other title companies, escrow officers, and there's a consensus across the board that this page is one of our like thorn in our side, or like, oh, wouldn't it be great if this happened? For whatever reason, don't know why. This page, about 50% of the time does not come out completed. It does have who the buyer's brokerage firm is, of course, if it's ABC, DEF Realty, and the seller's brokerage firm is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Real Estate. But what's almost like, it has the agent's name and that's it. Just the real estate company's name and the agent's name, and that's it. No phone numbers, no address, no email address. I just don't know why. So we just beg you as the escrow office to, whatever you do whatever, like, just complete this. Just because we want to communicate effectively and efficiently as possible with both agents on the transaction. We want to be able to get you the earnest money deposit, the email to you right away. We want to be able to get you the NHD email right away. We want to be able to communicate, like if we're missing the EMD and it hasn't come in the 3 days, we want to send. But when we have to, like, when this is the information is missing, it becomes a little bit difficult. So we want you to love us, and by loving us, have this page filled out in its entirety. If there's multiple agents, if it's a co-listing, have both names on there and have both their cell phone numbers on there and their email addresses, because we want to communicate with you as effectively and efficiently as possible. And we can only do that if you provide us the contact information for both offices. So having said that, this is our part. This is a lender requirement. It's one of the items that lenders do require in their lender request package at the very beginning. It's our acceptance, but not only for the lenders, it's for you as the agent, that you get this back from us, and that you understand that we are very appreciative of the transaction, but this is our acceptance of the transaction, and lets you know how, if we have received the earnest money deposit, if that box is checked, and how much we received. This is how we tell you, this is what we understand. We're telling you that we got, if there's a seller counter offer, we're acknowledging it. If there's a buyer counter offer, we're acknowledging it. If there's an addendum, we're acknowledging it. We're communicating back to you, and then we're giving you our information, our license number, because that is something that's required by the lenders to have, but not only by them, but by you. And then our contact information, our email address and our phone numbers, and the date. Can you go back real quick, Jennifer? I'm sorry. The date that we understand the acceptance of the agreement is. So we're going to put in there the date that we understand. If you see that date is not, if you don't agree with that date, give us a call, because if it gets down to the nitty gritty and there's some discrepancy or some, disagreement about a closing date, on the closing date, that's super important. And then of course the escrow number. So you can go on now, thanks. The preliminary title report, we have a super duper class about this. I'm not going to go over everything. I'm just going to let you know there's a few things that we do look on, but I encourage you to attend our preliminary title class. If you don't know, if you want to be on the list of attending, contact our sales agents, and they will go ahead and get you on a list and notify you. But basically the big 3 things is liens, restrictions, and up-to-date preliminary title report. Remember, I told you that if it's a pre-open, we'll go ahead and update again to add the buyer. But during the process, if we need an updated prelim, we will. And then the property actually gets updated toward right before closing, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the slides. The additional items to review confirm the seller's name as well as the property in question matches the preliminary title report. If there are variations, avenue, street, lane, boulevard, those are super important. And so we want to make sure that everything matches from the purchase agreement to the preliminary title report. Okay, and then review. When you review a preliminary title report, make sure that you understand, like if there's, if you know of a right-of-way easement and we're not showing it, or, just review your easements, your CC&Rs. You want to make sure that your buyer reviews, if there is an HOA, want to make sure that your buyer reviews your HOA, because they want, they can't be buying a house if they don't understand the, the covenants and, restrictions. They may want to use their property for, maybe they have 4 cars and there's only a 2-car garage. Guess what? Those CC&Rs say that they can't park those other 2 cars on the street. That might be an issue. So make sure that you do review those easements and CC&Rs, and that your buyer understands what they're getting themselves into purchasing the property. And then, excuse me. The next item that you want to make note of is any issues on the reports. You need to confirm removal and understand the impact prior to closing. So, for instance, if we're removing items from the preliminary title report, or we won't remove items depending on the request, whether they're coming from the buyer or the lender, and what that means. There's certain things on title that we can't remove, but the lender insists on. So that's just another thing that you might encounter down the road in a transaction, where you're hearing like, hey, you get a phone call, escrow saying they can't do this, lender saying they have to. So just read your prelim, be very familiar with it. So if you do get those phone calls, you're already prepared. You're understanding what they're talking about. Item number 6, whatever the case may be. Okay. Top red flags in escrow. The one thing, it's coming up often, and I'm not sure why, if it's the climate we're in, or we were in, or whatever the case may be, but federal tax liens is something that you need to be aware of. It takes a long time to get. I don't know if you know it out. COVID is not really a thing for us anymore, but a lot of the government offices are still operating. Half of the office is operating remotely and half of the office is in, and it still impacts their turnaround time. So federal tax liens take quite a bit, anywhere between 21 to 45 days. So if you see a federal tax lien on your prelim, that's a red flag. The next thing is property in estate, probate, or trust. A little bit of a piggyback on that as well is how your seller name is reading on the prelim, and does it match who you're with, who signed your listing agreement. But if you are finding yourself in a listing where the property is in estate, probate, trust, or sellers aren't matching, pick up the phone, give us a call. Let's do this investigation together, and we'll figure this out. And then we're going to probably, depending on the scenario, we might have to, refer you to a probate attorney. But at least we'll try to get, work together to figure this out, and what path you have to take to, on your way to sell the property. Paid and unreleased loans on old deeds of trust. I have one now. It's kind of, the escrow opened back in November. We're still not closed because they are working really, really, really hard to try to find, and when I say they, the seller has an attorney, to try to find the beneficiary or heirs of beneficiary, and to try to prove that the old deed of trust was paid off, because in the end, we cannot deliver your buyer clear title until we have everything addressed, and that includes an old deed of trust. Now, I've offered these particular sellers an attorney the bond, and there's a will, there's a way, and we can, if you have more questions about the process of applying for and having a bond issued for an old deed of trust that your client feels that it's been paid off, I'm happy to go into detail with that, but that is an option. Okay. And any last minute changes in buyers. I just had it this morning. I got loan docs this morning, and these loan docs, I had a single woman this entire transaction, and guess what? I got these loan docs this morning, and there's a man along with the woman on the deed of trust and on the loan docs, and I'm like, who is this person? So it happens, guys, but if there's any changes, or if you know that somebody's going to be added or taken off or whatever the case may be, let your escrow officer know. It's very helpful, because now not only do I have these loan docs, I have to make sure that this buyer doesn't have any federal tax liens or bankruptcy. And so we have to just we don't run buyers' names for other things, but these are the type things that we do have to stop if a buyer has a federal tax lien or a BK. So, and it's not, dead in the water, no one's going to die here because of it, but just, it's helpful. And then again, if you see solar panel, that is very helpful, by the way. And then one other thing is, if you see solar panels on the roof and you get your prelim and there's no solar exceptions, let's just double check, make it, they could very well be owned, and that's why there's nothing on the prelim. But it's just always a good rule of thumb to check, because we are human, we may miss things, but we just want to make sure that there's nothing that needs to be recorded and and released, and so that matter, because we don't want to be a seller away and then all of a sudden someone showing a seller exception. So and then the next item is client signings. In the seller signing, they will sign an estimate, closing statement, a CD, which is the closing disclosure, a grant deed, any tax forms. Now, I encourage you that if you have a seller that sells a lot, or I encourage you to ask for our forms ahead of time, so maybe the seller can give those forms to their CPA and have them filled out according to their tax situation. By no means are you going to advise them, nor will we, but we can provide those tax forms at day one of the escrow. So if you would like that to happen, just send us an email, pick up the phone. We're happy to do that. And then disbursement instructions and car acceptance. That's going to be in the seller package for the seller to sign. The buyer's package will consist of the estimated settlement statement, which is this, same as closing statement. We do not issue the buyer CDs. The lender issues buyer CDs if it's a finance transaction. Of course, if it's a cash transaction, there's no CD that even exists. But so the buyer will sign an estimated closing statement, rate and term, basically outlining their interest rate and the length of their loan, and vesting information, preliminary change of ownership that tells the tax office what kind of transaction this is, what's happening, and that determines if they're going to have to reassess the property or not, if it's just a husband and wife, or whatever the case may be. Qualified substitute, the buyer's substituting us into kind of making sure that all the FTB and FERPTA and all that good stuff is that we're collecting that information for the buyer. Info sheet, if they haven't filled out our start safe, our start in here, they will have to complete this part. But if they have, it's null and void. We don't need that. Loan docs, if it's a finance transaction, and a spousal deed if only one spouse is taking title. Even if they are going through a divorce, if the divorce is not final, the spouse will still have to sign a spousal deed. Guess what, guys? Ding, ding, ding. We do have another class talking about that. So make sure you get on our sales exec list for all our classes. And disbursement instructions and car acceptance. So our next area of concern is your closing date. There are a number of factors that can affect your close of escrow date from signing to closing. Once the loan documents are signed, they go back to the lender and they do a final review. So buyers think that they sign and they own the house. So just be clear on how that work, or explain to your buyers on how that works. There may be last minute funding conditions to address. You will hear from your escrow officer if they need your assistance. Please just be on alert on funding day, because they may need your help. Buyers closing funds must be given to us in a wire or cashier's check. If a cashier's check is given to us, we cannot close until the following day, because we have to bank that cashier's check. But if we are given it in a form of a wire, we can definitely, depending on the time of the day, we can definitely close same day. If your client does bank with a credit union, encourage them to wire their funds the day before the close of escrow, because the credit union does take a little bit more time than for instance, of Bank of America or Wells Fargo, or, whatever the case may be. If it is a credit union, encourage them to do it the day before. All wires must go through the Federal Reserve. So even if the lender is telling you, yay guys, congratulations, we funded. That's awesome. That's great. But guess what? That's the actual funder pressing the wire button to send the wire out. Does not mean we have it yet. Does not mean we're going to get it in 10 minutes. The wire goes to the Federal Reserve first. The Federal Reserve checks all their little terrorist list of concerned names, and then if any of those names, and it's not just because the wire is coming, for instance, like UWM, but the UWM puts the borrower's name, that's what the Federal Reserve is looking at. And if that name is similar to anybody on their list, the Federal Reserve will hold the wire and will not give it to us, and it goes into a whole little department called OFAC, and they're doing their thing, and then they contact us and ask for personal information for the buyers, so they will release the money. So if an escrow officer is calling you and saying, hey, I'm sorry, we haven't got the money, but I've discovered that the wire is sitting in OFAC, it's not going to be there forever, but it does take them a little bit of time. And I hate to put this out there, but don't panic. It almost not always lasts this long, but they can have the wire from anywhere between 24 to 48 hours before they will release it to our bank that we hold trust funds in. So that's just a little bit of a little tidbit for you to know that may happen to you. Okay. And then once the Federal Reserve releases it to our bank notifies you saying, hey, we got money for you. And then the escrow officer will send you an email saying, or a push notification saying, funded, yay, we're going to be releasing for the recording. And then once we release it for recording, that does not mean that the recorder's office is recording at that moment. We release it for recording. That means we send it to the title department saying, hey, we got money, we're ready to go, we're ready to record. They say, okay, and they run the quick date down. Remember I told you that we update things? Well, if we have a 45-day escrow, something could have happened from day 1 to day 45. So we're checking real quick within those 45 days. Now there is a 2-week gap, but we all know that because a plant date is a 2-week gap date, but we're doing our best to shorten that. We're checking real quick, making sure nobody has recorded anything. There's nothing new, and it does happen. I get abstract judgments, it does happen. So don't be surprised that if it does happen sometimes. So once that date down is complete, title is saying, yes, we're good to go, gives me the thumbs up, and they send it to the recorder's office. The recorders, depending on the day that we're in, or if it's closer to the end of the month, or whatever the case may be, the recorder's office goes through all of their entries in their portal, and they just take it like one thing at a time. Now, remember, all title companies are recording in the same type of portal. So, they have 4 recorders. And so one recorder is pulling, and they're just kind of pulling, and they kind of just try to do it in a fair manner. So if we have Chicago Title has 10 recordings in the portal, and another title company has 10 recordings in the portal, all 10 of ours aren't just going at one time. They're kind of pulling. And so it does take a little bit of time to get it recorded and getting that confirmation. And once we get that recording confirmation, we will send out an email or push notification saying, yay, we're on record. Now we're on record, but we have to go through the file one more time to make sure, again, we're human, that we did not miss something. So we're reviewing the contract, we're reviewing the preliminary title report, we're making sure that all the invoices we received, are in the system and being paid correctly to the right payee. So even though we're on record, I know the first thing I want to do is pay you agents, because you're my partners, you're on my team. I want to, celebrate with you, but just know that your escrow officer is going through and making sure that everything's being paid correctly as it stated on the prelim and on the contract. And at that time, once we're on record, that's what your escrow unit is doing, is going through. And if they have a few closings that day, that's what may take a little bit longer. But yes, absolutely, we want to get you paid right away. So just know that once we're on record, it takes the escrow officer or escrow assistant or unit just a little bit to go through their file. Okay. And then top tips for a smooth escrow is communicate any changes. Again, any changes. Even if you think it doesn't affect us, it doesn't hurt to tell us. Just let us know whatever change that you may that you come across, just tell us. And if it affects us, great, we're excited that you let us know. If it doesn't, we'll let you know, hey, thanks for letting us know. I think that's something that's just between, you know, the agents or the buyers or the lender and the buyer, whatever the case may be. Okay, but let your escrow officer know ASAP. Let us know if there's any changes in credits. If there's additional credits, like say there was a $4,000 credit and the seller's giving another additional $1,000 because of the request for repairs for whatever that might be, or if there's a reduction or increase in the sales price because of change of credits. So, you know, let us know that. Sometimes we get loan docs and the loan docs have a different sales price than we have. It happens, people, it does. So we have like, what happened? So let us know about that. Let us know if your clients are heading out of town, out of state or out of the country. Please let us know. Out of the country becomes a little sticky and difficult because those documents that need to be notarized cannot be notarized just anywhere. They have to be notarized at the U.S. Embassy, the U.S. Consulate. And guess what? Those appointments are just not readily available. They could be 30 to 45 days out. We want to help you close this transaction. So just let us know if that's the situation. If they're leaving the state and you have an accepted offer, leaving the area and you have an accepted offer, we can at the very least get the notarized documents signed and notarized and then have the rest of the documents, electronically signed for the sellers. Buyers are a whole different animal if there's a loan. Okay. Let us know if there's death. If you discover solar, power of attorney, if that situation. Quick side note, power of attorneys die with the person. So if there is a person that has a power of attorney and they die, you can't use that power of attorney cannot. Again, another class that we have. So let us know about those complicated things if things change like that. And then let us know the best way to reach you normally when there's an urgent issue. If you want us to text you, we can do that. If in lieu of a phone call, I have, there's certain real estate agents that, have day jobs and they can't answer the phone. So that case may be, but if there's an urgent matter and we need your help, let us know in that case how we need to communicate with you. Okay. Review your client's estimated closing statement. Super important, guys. I think a lot of us here, but we send, before your clients go to the signing table, we send you an estimated closing statement to review. Again, we're human. We may have missed stuff or things have happened in the last 12 hours prior to that signing appointment and invoices need to be added or whatever the case may be. We're going to send you an estimated closing statement. Take 5 minutes and review it for us, please. So then at least it actually makes you look just as good as us because, your client's not at the signing table and said, well, my agent told me the credit was going to be changed, or my agent's, do I have to pay the termite myself because it's not here? Whatever the case may be, review those closing statements for any missing things or things that need to be corrected. And then if you have any questions at any point of the transaction, contact us, text us, email us, give us a phone call, drop by our office. We love visitors, but just at any point, come and just reach out and ask us questions. Cancellations on an escrow that must be fully canceled before a new escrow can be opened. The RPA outlines the standards for cancellations. Take time to review it. Know your cancellation procedures and the process. All cancellations must be given to escrow in writing. Okay, so when you have that car cancellation, provide it to us. If canceled in contingency period, EMD will customarily be returned to the buyer. Okay, if the closer to closing, the more often sellers wish to retain the deposit. If the funds are disputed, the following steps are required. Okay, the cancellation instructions need to be given to escrow in writing. Okay, and once that cancellation instructions are not, if they're not responded to, then you would do a notice to perform. Issue that notice to perform. Once that notice to perform time expires, then provide those 2 items to your escrow officer, and they will issue a 10-day letter to the parties that are not responding on the disputed deposit. Once that 10 days has expired, then the escrow can safely, without any doubt, issue that disputed deposit on who's requesting it. Now, if there was a response that's received within those 10 days, that deposit still stays disputed and must be worked out directly between the buyer and the seller. Okay. Certain vendors who have agreed to be paid through escrow will still expect payment if escrow is canceled. So if any work was done, termite, whatever the case may be, they still expect to be paid. So depending on the dispute of the earnest money deposit or no dispute, we will request instructions on paying those vendors out of any retained deposits that we have. An important reminder is we cannot overstate the importance of communicating through our secure channels. Do not send sensitive information through email. If you need to give us sensitive information, pick up the phone, stop by, whatever the case may be. Wire fraud is real. If your buyer's funds are diverted due to fraud, they may never recover the money. I went to some training earlier this week. We used to have 24 to 36 hours to be able to try to recover the money. That training that I went to this week, it's now down to 12 hours. We have a 12-hour window to recover any money. And a lot of the times it's very difficult to recover that money. 74% of home buyers incorrectly believe their title company or bank could recover funds that are wired to the wrong account. So just so you know, our window is very small now. 52% of home buyers are completely unaware of wire fraud in real estate. They just think they see that stuff on TV, unfortunately. 3.5 billion was attempted to be diverted and wired to criminally controlled accounts in 2019. It's gone up. And so just keep your clients aware, constantly communicate. I guess the word of the day and should be the word of the week and the month and the year is communicate, communicate, communicate. And we will do the same for you. We will communicate back to you.
So at this point, I know we've gone over. Thank you so much, Anna, for the great information that you delivered. And also thank you to everyone who attended the class today. We will send out the recording later this afternoon. And if there's anything else that caught your eye from this session and you want to ask your sales exec, please do so. So at this time, we will formally conclude the class, but if there is a question that you did not get answered and you wanted to quickly unmute and ask Anna, we've got just a couple of minutes where we can allow for that. All right, well, it seems like you covered everything, Anna, so thank you again, and I hope everybody has a fantastic Friday. So look for our next class coming out. We're going to try to do these the second Friday of most months throughout the year, and we'll always give you guys a couple of weeks heads up on what's coming out next. And don't forget, you can look for all our past classes on our YouTube channel at Chicago Title Fresno. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.